Hey besties, before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now, where you're watching from. Whether it's sunrise in Kenya, midnight in the United States, afternoon in Ghana, or evening in Portugal, I want to know. Don't just sit back, tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. The sound of sizzling hair under the hot iron filled the cramped salon as Marcus counted the crumpled bills with trembling fingers. Blood trickled down his split lip, staining the money red. His mother's latest client had gotten rough night tonight, leaving bruises that makeup couldn't hide. At 24, Marcus had perfected the art of applying concealer to wounds that shouldn't exist. Crown and Glory Hair Studio read the faded sign outside, but there was no glory left in what happened after closing hours. Mama Boys had turned her 3 sons into what she called special consultants, young men who styled more than just hair for wealthy women craving attention. The wig shop next door held secrets in every synthetic strand. Designer pieces hung like silent witnesses to transactions that left Marcus feeling hollow. His younger brothers, Devin at 22 and Jamal at 20, worked the evening shift while he handled the late-night appointments. Each styled hairpiece cost more than most people's rent, but the real price was paid in dignity. Tonight felt different. The woman who just left had whispered something about permanent arrangements and slipped him in a dress written on expensive paper. Her manicured nails had dug into his wrist as she spoke of introducing him to her investment group. The fear in Marcus's chest grew heavier with each breath. His phone buzzed with a text from Devin. "Mama's counting again. She's planning something big." Through the salon's mirror, Marcus caught his reflection. Designer clothes Mama bought to make him look presentable, styled hair that cost more than groceries, and eyes that had lost their spark years ago. The golden scissors on the counter gleamed under the fluorescent lights, sharp enough to cut through lies, but not strong enough to cut them free. The front door chimed as Mama Boys returned, her heels clicking against the tile floor like a countdown timer. She smiled at the blood-stained money in Marcus's hands, her expression hungry rather than concerned. "Good boy," she purred, already calculating tomorrow's possibilities. "Mrs. Henderson wants to book you for the entire weekend. Private consultation at her estate." Marcus felt his world tilting. Weekend appointments never end well. His hands shook as he set down the golden scissors, knowing that some cuts leave scars that never heal. The salon mirror reflected 3 brothers trapped in a nightmare, dressed up as success, while their mother counted blood money and planned their destruction one appointment at a time. 6 years ago, the salon had buzzed with different energy. Marcus's hands moved confidently through a client's hair, sectioning and cutting with artistic precision. "I want to open a styling school someday," he told his reflection, practicing techniques he'd learned from YouTube videos and stolen moments with professional magazines. Mama Boys had different plans brewing even then. After their father abandoned them when Jamal turned 14, she'd grown bitter and calculating. The legitimate salon business barely paid rent, and she watched her son's talents with predatory eyes. "Beauty is power," she'd whisper, "and power pays bills." Devin dreamed of creating custom wigs for cancer patients, his gentle hands crafting pieces that restored confidence to women who'd lost everything. At 16, he'd spend hours perfecting techniques, creating masterpieces from synthetic fibers that looked more real than nature. Jamal wanted to become a barber, opening a neighborhood shop where kids could get fresh cuts before school photos. The brothers would stay up late planning their futures, sketching salon layouts and business plans on napkins. Marcus had even started saving money in a coffee can hidden behind the shampoo bottles. $500, enough for a down payment on their dreams, enough to build something clean and honest. Mama Boys discovered the money during one of her inspections. She held the coffee can like evidence in a trial, her eyes cold as winter. "Dreams don't pay rent," she said, pocketing their savings. "You boys need to understand reality. Your looks, your skills, they're assets. Assets that should work for this family." That night, she introduced the first special client. Mrs. Williams needed her hair styled for a charity gala, but she also needed companionship. "Just conversation," Mama lied, pushing Marcus toward the woman's waiting car. "She's lonely, and she pays well for attention." The ride to Mrs. Williams' mansion felt like a funeral procession. Marcus sat in leather seats that smelled like expensive perfume and broken promises, watching streetlights blur past the window. He'd returned home 3 hours later with bruises on his neck and $300 in his pocket. Devin and Jamal watched their brother stumble through the salon door, noting his torn shirt and hollow expression. "What happened?" Devin whispered. But Marcus couldn't speak. The words were buried under shame too heavy to carry. Mama boys counted the money with satisfaction. "See, one night earned more than a week of regular appointments. You boys are sitting on gold mines, and I was too blind to see it." She looked at Devin and Jamal with new interest, calculating their worth like inventory. The coffee can remained empty after that night. Dreams died slowly in the salon, suffocated by silk scarves and designer expectations. The brothers learned to smile through pain, to style their trauma like hair, hidden, controlled, acceptable to the outside world. Their tools became weapons of survival rather than instruments of art. The golden scissors lost their shine. The wig displays became props in performances they never auditioned for, and the salon mirrors reflected strangers wearing their faces. The dream of honest work faded like hair color in harsh sunlight, leaving only the nightmare of what they had become. Jamal pressed his face against the bathroom tile, cold ceramic offering the only comfort he could find. At 20, his body carried the weight of transactions that left invisible scars. The client from earlier had been particularly demanding, leaving marks that told stories Jamal couldn't speak out loud. "She's paying for the full weekend experience," Mama Boys had announced, sliding a stack of hundreds across the salon counter. "Mrs. Patterson wants you to accompany her to the country club, play the part of her young fitness trainer. The story's already arranged." The wig shop's back room had become a dressing area where the brothers transformed into characters they'd never chosen to play. Designer suits hung like costumes, each piece carefully selected to maintain illusions that wealthy women paid premium prices to sustain. Jamal had learned to knot ties around his throat without thinking of nooses.
Devin found him crying among the synthetic hair pieces, 22 years old and breaking apart between human hair extensions and closure pieces. "I can't do this anymore," Jamal whispered, his hand shaking as he touched the bruises hidden beneath his collar. "She hurt me, Devin. She hurt me and paid Mama extra for the privilege." The older brother knelt beside Jamal, his own eyes haunted by similar experiences. "I know," Devin said with his voice cracking. "Mrs. Chen's Bridge Club wants to book me for their monthly gathering. 5 women, 1 evening. And Mama's already spent the deposit on new inventory." They'd tried refusing before. Hunger was Mama's favorite punishment. Days without food, locked in the salon storage room with only styling tools for company. "Beauty requires sacrifice," she'd say, bringing them water but no meals. "Your clients are investing in fantasies. The least you can do is appreciate their generosity." Marcus found his brothers huddled together like survivors of a war nobody else could see. At 24, he'd learned to compartmentalize trauma, storing pain in places his mind couldn't easily access. But seeing his younger brother's suffering awakened something protective and desperate. "We could run," Marcus whispered, though they'd had this conversation countless times. "Pack our tools, find another city, start over." Devin shook his head. "With what money? She controls everything. The business accounts, our identification papers, even our phones. We're ghosts, Marcus. We exist only when she needs us to perform." The salon's phone rang with another appointment request. Through the walls, they heard Mama negotiating prices like she was selling livestock. "My boys are artists," she purred into the receiver. "Devin's hands create magic with wigs. Jamal has the body of a Greek statue. And Marcus can make any woman feel 20 years younger." Jamal vomited in the sink, his body rejecting the poison of commodification. The styling chair where he'd once dreamed of giving neighborhood kids fresh cuts now felt like an electric chair, each appointment another step toward complete dissolution. The brothers clung to each other in the wig shop's dim light, surrounded by hairpieces that masked more than baldness. They were wigs themselves, artificial versions of men they might have become, styled and positioned to fulfill other people's needs while their authentic selves suffocated beneath synthetic expectations. Outside, the city pulsed with normal life. People worked honest jobs, paid honest bills, went home to relationships built on choice rather than transaction. The brothers watched through tinted windows, observing a world they'd been exiled from, wondering if redemption was possible or if they were already too damaged to deserve salvation. The golden scissors lay forgotten on the counter, their edges dulled by cutting through too many lies. The appointment book lay open like a confession, filled with names and numbers that made Devon's stomach turn. Mrs. Blackwell, Mrs. Rodriguez, Mrs. Kim, wealthy women who paid Mama Boy's premium rates for access to her sons' bodies in silence. Each entry represented another piece of their souls, sold to maintain the illusion of success. Marcus stood in the wig shop, running his fingers through a custom piece worth $3,000. The hair felt real because it was real, harvested from women desperate enough to sell their crowning glory for survival. He understood that desperation now, the way poverty could twist love into something unrecognizable. "She's got us booked solid through next month," Devon said, his voice hollow as he read through appointment cards. "Charity galas, private parties, weekend retreats. She's telling people we're personal stylists and fitness consultants, but the hourly rates tell a much different story." Jamal emerged from the bathroom, his eyes red from crying. The youngest brother had always been the most sensitive, the one who still believed their situation might improve if they just worked hard enough. That hope was dying slowly, suffocated by reality's cruel hands. "Mrs. Patterson wants to extend our weekend arrangement," he whispered, showing them the text message on his phone. "She's offering to double the fee if I agree to move into her guest house for a month." Mama's already responding to her messages. The salon's atmosphere felt thick with unspoken trauma. Each styled head of hair represented a moment of artistic expression corrupted by the circumstances surrounding it. The brothers had become skilled at creating beauty while dying inside, their talents weaponized against their own dignity. Devon picked up a closure piece he'd been working on, intricate stitching that would give a client the appearance of natural hair growth. His hands shook as he realized he'd been putting the same care into this hairpiece that he'd once reserved for his dreams. The irony cut deeper than any scissors could. "She's grooming us for something bigger," Marcus said, noting the expensive clothes Mama had been buying, the way she'd been coaching us on etiquette and conversation skills. "These aren't just isolated appointments anymore. She's building a clientele, establishing us as a brand." The realization hit them simultaneously. They weren't just being exploited, they were being trafficked. The legitimate salon business was a front for something far more sinister. Their artistic skills used as bait to attract customers seeking much more than hair services. Mama Boy's voice drifted from the main salon as she conducted another phone interview. "My boys are exceptional, trained in European styling techniques, fluent in multiple languages, and very accommodating to special requests. The investment is substantial, but the experience is unforgettable." Jamal grabbed a pair of cutting shears, his knuckles white around the handles. For a moment, his brothers feared what he might do with them, but he only stared at his reflection in the blade's surface. "I used to want to make people beautiful. Now I can't even look at myself without seeing something ugly." The wig displays around them seemed to mock their situation. Beautiful facades hiding empty foundations, artificial constructions designed to deceive rather than enhance. They'd become human wigs, wearing personas that suited other people's fantasies while their authentic selves withered away.
Devon found their father's old business card tucked behind a mirror, faded but still legible. Johnson Family Barbershop, where every cut tells a story. Their father had walked away when the salon started failing, unable to watch his family business transform into something he didn't recognize. "Maybe he knew," Marcus said, understanding flickering in his eyes. "Maybe he saw where Mama was heading and couldn't stop it, so he saved himself the only way he could." The appointment book continued to fill with names and dates, each entry another nail in the coffin of their innocence. But something else was growing in the silence between scheduled degradations, a desperate kind of strength that comes from having nothing left to lose. The country club's bathroom mirror reflected a stranger wearing Jamal's face. Designer clothes couldn't hide the tremor in his hands or the way his shoulders curved inward like he was trying to disappear. Mrs. Patterson's fitness consultation had lasted 4 hours, leaving him feeling like he'd been hollowed out with a melon scoop. "You're my little secret," she whispered, pressing cash into his palm while her husband played golf outside. "Don't worry, darling. Mama Boys knows exactly what I need from you." Back at the salon, Devin worked on a wig order with mechanical precision, each stitch a meditation against the screaming in his head. The human hair beneath his fingers reminded him of his own humanity, the way touch could create beauty or destroy souls depending on the intention behind it. Marcus found him there at midnight, both brothers unable to sleep after their respective appointments. The wig shop felt like a mausoleum, filled with the ghosts of women who'd sold their hair and men who'd sold their dignity. "She's expanding operations," Marcus said, showing Devin a business plan he'd found in Mama's purse. "Kira's Crown Services, premium masculine companionship for discerning clientele. She's planning to recruit more young men, turn this into a full operation." The document outlined a future that made their current situation look like paradise. Mama Boys had researched similar businesses in other cities, noting profit margins and expansion strategies. They weren't just her sons anymore. They were prototype products in a business model she intended to replicate. Devin's hand stilled on the wig he'd been styling. "She's going to destroy other families too," he whispered. "Turn other mothers' sons into what we've become." Jamal stumbled through the salon's front door, his expensive shirt torn and his lip bleeding. He'd clearly run from Mrs. Patterson's estate, his feet bare and his eyes wild with terror. "She tried to drug me," he gasped, collapsing into a styling chair. "Something in the champagne. When I refused to drink it, she got angry, said she'd paid for the full experience." Marcus knelt beside his youngest brother, rage building like a fire in his chest. The protective instinct he'd suppressed for years roared to life, demanding action instead of submission. "What did she do to you?" "She called Mama, right in front of me, said I was being difficult, that she wanted a replacement or a refund. Mama told her to discipline me however she saw fit, that I needed to learn proper customer service." The brothers stared at each other in the salon's harsh fluorescent light, surrounded by the tools of their trade and the instruments of their destruction. The golden scissors caught the light like a weapon, their edges sharp enough to cut through more than hair. Devin stood abruptly, sweeping wig stands to the floor in a rare display of violence. Synthetic hair scattered like confetti at a funeral, beautiful and artificial and ultimately meaningless. "I can't do this anymore," he said, voice steady for the first time in months. "I won't let her turn us into monsters." "She'll starve us again," Marcus warned, though his tone suggested he was ready to face that consequence. Jamal looked up from the styling chair, blood drying on his chin, but determination growing in his eyes. "Then we starve," he said simply. "Better to die as men than live as things she can sell." The appointment book lay open on the counter, filled with scheduled degradations that suddenly felt optional rather than inevitable. The brothers looked at each other and saw something they'd almost forgotten. Themselves, real and flawed and worthy of dignity. Outside, the city slept peacefully, while 3 young men planned their rebellion in a salon that had become their prison. The golden scissors gleamed with possibility, ready to cut through the ties that bound them to a life they'd never chosen. Tomorrow would bring consequences, but tonight brought something more valuable: the decision to stop participating in their own destruction. Mama Boys' heels clicked against the salon floor like a countdown timer as she surveyed the destruction. Wig stands lay scattered across the shop, synthetic hair tangled in piles that looked like crime scene evidence. Her son stood in formation, Marcus protecting Jamal, Devin clutching scissors like a weapon, all 3 wearing expressions she'd never seen before. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Mrs. Patterson called me screaming about Jamal running away like some common criminal.
Do you have any idea how much money you've cost me?" The money. Always the money. Never their safety, never their sanity, never the pieces of their souls that clients collected like trophies. Marcus stepped forward, his body shielding his brothers from their mother's rage. "We're done," he said simply. "No more appointments, no more special services, no more selling ourselves to keep your business profitable." Mama Boy's laugh was bitter as winter wind. "Done? You ungrateful boys. Think you can just stop working? After everything I've sacrificed for you? The clothes on your backs, the food in your stomachs, the roof over your heads, all paid for by the same clients you now don't want to serve?" Devin found his voice, steady despite the tremor in his hands. "We never asked for this, Mama. We wanted to style hair, create beautiful things, build an honest business. You turned us into prostitutes and called it customer service." The word hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Prostitutes. The thing they'd all been thinking but never dared to say aloud. Mama Boy's face twisted with fury at hearing her business model named so plainly.
"How dare you use that word in my salon," she hissed. "You boys provide companionship, styling services, personal attention to lonely women who appreciate your talents. If you choose to interpret that as something vulgar, that's your own dirty minds talking." Jamal stepped out from behind Marcus, his young face aged by experiences no 20-year-old should carry. "Mrs. Patterson tried to drug me tonight. When I wouldn't drink her champagne, she held me down and tried to force it down my throat. When I fought back, she called you for permission to hurt me." "And what did you tell her?" Marcus asked, though they all knew the answer. Mama Boy's silence was confession enough. Her sons had always been disposable to her, renewable resources in a business that consumed young men and spat out their remains. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. It had been gradual, like hair growing gray, until one day they woke up unrecognizable. "You told her to discipline us however she wanted," Devin said, his voice flat with realization, "because we're not your sons anymore. We're inventory." The salon mirrors reflected three young men who looked like they'd been through a war, which in many ways they had. Their mother studied their faces like she was calculating their resale value, weighing their defiance against potential profit loss. "Fine," she said finally. "Be difficult. See how long your principles last when you're hungry and homeless. Mrs. Chen's paying $5,000 for Devin's services this weekend. Mrs. Patterson wants to book Jamal for her anniversary party despite tonight's drama. And Marcus, darling, I have 3 new clients who specifically requested you based on recommendations." She pulled appointment cards from her purse like she was dealing cards in a rigged game. "Refuse these bookings and you can find somewhere else to live. See how your artistic dreams work out when you're sleeping in shelters and begging for change." The brothers looked at each other and saw their father's choice reflected in their own faces. Stay and participate in their own destruction, or leave and face an uncertain future with nothing but their dignity intact. Marcus picked up the golden scissors and held them like a promise. "Then we'll find somewhere else to live," he said simply, "because some things are worth more than money." The appointment cards fluttered to the floor like dying leaves, and Mama Boy's empire began crumbling around her perfectly manicured feet. The storage room behind the wig shop had become their sanctuary. 3 brothers huddled together as Mama Boy's rage echoed through the walls. She'd locked them in without food for 2 days, the familiar punishment that had broken them so many times before. But hunger felt different now that they'd chosen it. "Mrs. Rodriguez called 6 times, Devin whispered, listening to Mama's phone conversations through the thin wall. "She's threatening to take her business elsewhere if I don't show up for her daughter's wedding consultation." The irony wasn't lost on them. They were hiding among synthetic hairpieces while their mothers sold their authentic selves to the highest bidders. Jamal's stomach cramped with hunger, but he felt cleaner than he had in years.
Marcus had been working on something in the darkness, using tools from his styling kit and materials from broken wig displays. When he finally revealed his creation, his brothers gasped. He'd fashioned lockpicks from bobby pins and hair clips, crude but potentially effective. "This is something Dad taught me when I was 12, he explained, remembering a father who'd once been proud of his son's curiosity, back when he still believed in teaching us useful skills. The lock clicked open like a prayer being answered. They emerged into the salon's dim light, moving like ghosts through the space that had been their prison. Everything looked different now. The styling chairs seemed smaller, the mirrors less intimidating, the golden scissors within reach. Devin grabbed his father's old business card from behind the mirror, the one artifact of honest work remaining in the corrupted space. Marcus collected his styling tools, while Jamal packed the few personal belongings they'd been allowed to keep. "She's going to call the police," Jamal worried, understanding the power imbalance that had kept them trapped. "Tell them we stole from her, destroyed her property." "With what evidence?" Marcus asked, though he shared the concern. "Our fingerprints are on everything because we live here. Our names are on the business registration. Legally, we have as much right to these tools as she does." They moved through the wig shop like archaeologists excavating their own lives, taking only what they'd created with their own hands. Devin selected his finest custom pieces, not to sell, but as proof of his artistry. Marcus packed his cutting shears and styling implements. Jamal took nothing but his dreams, carried in his heart like seeds waiting for better soil. The salon's front door seemed impossibly far away, freedom measured in footsteps across familiar tile. They'd walked this floor thousands of times as prisoners. Now each step towards the exit felt like resurrection. Mama Boyce's voice drifted from her apartment upstairs, negotiating rates with potential clients who had no idea they were purchasing human beings. "My boys are temporarily unavailable, but I expect them back to work in the week. The rates remain the same." Even now she believed her control was temporary, that hunger and desperation would eventually drive them back to the appointment book. She'd underestimated the power of choosing dignity over survival, the way freedom tastes sweeter than food when you've been starved of choice. The brothers paused at the threshold, looking back at the space that had held their childhoods hostage and their adulthoods in bondage. The golden scissors caught the streetlight through the window, a reminder of tools that could create beauty or inflict wounds depending on who wielded them. "Where do we go now?" Devin asked, the practical question that accompanied every escape from familiar hell. Marcus looked at his brothers and saw the men they'd always been beneath the roles they'd been forced to play. "Forward," he said simply. "We figure it out as we go, but we never come back here."
They stepped into the night air like baptismal candidates emerging from dark water, born again, but scarred by the process. Behind them, the salon waited with its appointment book still full of promises they'd never keep again. The homeless shelter smelled like industrial disinfectant and broken dreams, but it represented something the brothers had never experienced: honest poverty. No silk sheets hiding bruises, no designer clothes masking shame, just the clean desperation of people trying to survive without selling their souls. Marcus worked his first legitimate job in years, washing dishes at a diner for minimum wage. His hands, once soft from expensive lotions meant to appeal to wealthy clients, now bore cuts from broken plates and chemical burns from harsh detergents. Each mark felt like a badge of honor. "You're wasting talent in that kitchen," Devin told him, working on a wig for a cancer patient at the local hospital. He'd volunteered his services in exchange for a small workspace, creating beautiful pieces for women who'd lost their hair to chemotherapy rather than clients who'd lost their humanity to wealth. Jamal had found work at a community barbershop, learning techniques from an elderly man named Ray who treated haircuts like sacred ceremonies. "Every head tells a story," he'd say, guiding Jamal's hands with patience their mother had never shown. "Our job is to help them tell it better." The brothers shared a studio apartment above a laundromat, the constant hum of washing machines serving as a lullaby that helped them sleep without nightmares. They'd furnished the space with thrift store finds and dreams of legitimacy, each piece chosen for function rather than appearance.
"Mrs. Patterson, been calling the shelter," Marcus announced, showing them a message the caseworker had passed along. "She's offering double rates if I'll just come back for one appointment." The temptation was real. Their rent was due, their savings non-existent, their pride still tender as healing wounds. But they'd learned to measure wealth differently now, counting dignity in increments more valuable than currency. Devon's wig work had attracted attention from oncology nurses who recommended his services to patients. His creations were simpler than the elaborate pieces he'd crafted for Mama Boy's clients, but they carried a purpose that made his hands steady and his heart light. "I made Mrs. Washington cry today," he shared, describing an elderly woman who'd seen her own reflection for the first time since starting treatment. "Happy tears, though. She said I gave her herself back." Jamal's barbershop stories were filled with neighborhood kids who'd never had anyone take time with their haircuts, men who needed more than grooming, but also conversation and respect. He was learning that his gentle hands could heal as well as they'd once been forced to harm. "Ray wants to make me a partner," Jamal announced, his voice filled with disbelief. "Says the shop needs young energy, that I have instincts for the work that can't be taught." They celebrated with discount pizza and dreams spoken out loud without fear of ridicule. Marcus talked about culinary school, Devon about opening a medical wig boutique, Jamal about expanding Ray's shop into a full-service grooming center for the community. The conversation was interrupted by footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, familiar, determined. Mama Boy's had found them, her designer clothes and expensive perfume incongruous in their humble space. She looked around the studio apartment like she was touring a museum of poverty. "This is what your dignity bought you," she asked, noting the second-hand furniture and cramped quarters. "A rat hole above a laundromat, when you could be living in luxury with women who appreciated your talents." Marcus stood in between his mother and his brothers, understanding finally that protection worked both ways. "We're happy here," he said simply. "We're free." "Free?" Mama Boys laughed bitterly. "Free to struggle, free to scrape by, free to waste gifts that could make you wealthy? I built an empire around your talents, and you threw it away for this?" Devon found his voice, stronger now than it had been in the salon. "You built a prison around our talents," he corrected. "We threw away the bars, not the gifts." The apartment felt smaller with her presence, tainted by memories they were still processing. But the brothers stood together, a united front against the woman who had once controlled their every movement. "I'm closing the salon," she announced, playing what she thought was her final card. "Without you boys, there's no business. Your regular clients are asking for refunds, the wig orders are backing up, and the rent is overdue. Happy now?" They looked at each other and found they were, indeed, happy. The salon's closure meant other young men wouldn't be groomed into their former lives. Other families wouldn't be destroyed by the same corruption that had nearly consumed them. "We're sorry for your loss," Marcus said formally, and meant it in ways his mother couldn't understand. Mama Boy's return visit wasn't social. She'd brought sheriff's deputies and a stack of legal papers, her final attempt to reclaim property she considered stolen. The brothers stood in their small apartment like defendants in a trial they'd never agreed to attend. "These boys stole $10,000 worth of professional equipment," she declared, pointing to Devon's styling tools and Marcus's shears. "Hair extensions, wigs, clients' deposits. They cleaned me out when they ran away like thieves in the night." The deputy looked uncomfortable with the domestic drama unfolding in his presence. Family disputes involving adult children rarely resulted in criminal charges, especially when ownership of salon equipment was questionable at best. "Ma'am, do you have receipts showing you purchased these items specifically?" he asked, noting how the brothers' tools showed years of personal use and customization. Mama Boy's hesitation was telling. The styling equipment had been accumulated over years, some pieces gifts, others purchased jointly, many modified by the brothers' own hands to suit their techniques. Claiming exclusive ownership was complicated when the users had lived and worked in her establishment.
"They're my sons," she said, playing what she thought was a stronger hand. "Everything they own belongs to the family business. They can't just steal from their own mother." Jamal stepped forward, his young face aged by experiences that showed in his eyes. "Deputy, can you tell my mother that we're adults? That we have the right to leave home and take our personal belongings?" The legal confrontation was painful, but necessary, like surgery to remove infected tissue. The deputy examined their identification, confirmed their adult status, and gently explained that leaving home wasn't theft, even when family members disagreed with the decision. "What about the client deposits?" Mama Boys demanded, grasping for any legal foothold. "They had scheduled appointments, services that won't be provided. That's fraud." Marcus felt his brothers tense beside him, knowing the nature of those services couldn't be described in front of law enforcement. The deputy sensed undercurrents he didn't want to explore, family secrets that weren't his jurisdiction. "Ma'am, if you have business disputes with clients, that's a civil matter. These young men aren't responsible for contracts they didn't sign." The apartment felt like a courtroom as Mama Boys realized her legal strategy was failing. Her sons weren't criminals. They were escapees. An escape wasn't illegal when you were fleeing exploitation rather than responsibility. "You'll be back," she said finally, her voice carrying less certainty than before. "When reality hits, when bills pile up, when you realize how hard honest work is compared to what I offered you, the salon will be waiting." Devon met her eyes with clarity he'd never possessed in her presence. "The salon is closing. Remember? You said so yourself. And even if it wasn't, we'd rather wash dishes for minimum wage than sell ourselves for maximum profit." The words hit their target, revealing the ugly truth beneath elegant euphemisms. Mama Boys' business model was finally named correctly. Prostitution dressed up in salon services. Human trafficking disguised as family enterprise. She gave you opportunities most young men would kill for. Wealthy women, luxury experiences, money most people never see. And you threw it all away for this? She gestured around the modest apartment like she was indicating a garbage dump. Jamal found strength in his voice that surprised everyone, including himself. "You gave us trauma disguised as opportunity. You sold us to women who hurt us and called it customer service. You starved us when we resisted and praised us when we submitted. That's not motherhood, that's ownership." The deputy had heard enough to understand the situation's true nature. His expression hardened as he looked at Mama Boys with new understanding, seeing her claims of theft in a new light. "Ma'am, I think it's time for you to leave," he said firmly. "These young men have the right to live independently, and if you continue harassing them, we'll need to discuss restraining orders." The legal threat was real, carrying consequences Mama Boys couldn't afford. Her business was already failing, her reputation damaged by client complaints, her future uncertain without the sons she'd exploited. She left the apartment like a general retreating from a lost battlefield, her designer heels clicking a funeral march down the stairs. The brothers watched from their window as she climbed into a taxi, her empire reduced to a purse full of unpaid bills and a phone full of angry clients. "It's over," Marcus said, and meant it completely. The golden scissors lay on their kitchen table, ready for honest work in a world where they could finally use their talents to create beauty instead of enabling harm. 2 years later, the new Crown and Glory hair studio occupied a bright corner space in the Arts District, sunlight streaming through windows that had never known shame. The brothers had reclaimed their mother's name for the business, transforming it from a monument to exploitation into a celebration of authentic artistry. Marcus stood behind the reception desk, his culinary school diploma hanging beside certifications in advanced haircutting techniques. He'd discovered that creating beautiful food and styling beautiful hair required similar precision, patience, and love for the craft. His hands, once trembling with trauma, now moved with confident grace whether holding shears or whisking sauces. Devon's medical wig boutique occupied the studio's back section, where cancer patients and alopecia sufferers found dignity restored through his careful craftsmanship. Each piece was custom-fitted with the attention he'd once given wealthy women's fantasies, but now his artistry served healing rather than harm. The wall displayed thank you letters from women who'd found themselves again in his creations. Jamal had become the neighborhood's favorite barber, his chair perpetually occupied by customers who came from more than haircuts. Children saved allowance money for his services, knowing he'd take time to perfect their fades and listen to their stories. His gentle hands had learned to build confidence instead of enduring abuse. The studio buzzed with legitimate energy, clients scheduling appointments openly, prices posted clearly, services described honestly. No secret menus, no special arrangements, no coded language hiding transactions that violated human dignity. The appointment book contained only names, dates, and hair services that could be discussed in daylight. Mrs. Rodriguez wants to book all 3 of us for her daughter's quinceañera. Hair, makeup, and wig styling for the entire wedding party. She's offering to pay premium rates for Saturday service. The same Mrs. Rodriguez, who'd once demanded Devon's presence at private gatherings, now respected their professional boundaries and artistic expertise. The transformation in their client relationships reflected their own healing. They commanded respect because they'd learned to respect themselves. Marcus counted the day's earnings with hands that no longer shook, money earned through talent rather than degradation. We're 3 months ahead on rent, and we've got enough saved to expand the medical wig program.
Their success wasn't measured in luxury cars or designer clothes, but in sleep that came without nightmares, mirrors that reflected men instead of commodities, and work that built dignity rather than destroying it. They'd learned the true wealth lay in choice, the freedom to say yes or no without fear of punishment. The studio's door chimed as their final client of the day entered. Ray, Jamal's former mentor, needed his weekly trim and the conversation that came with it. At 78, he'd become the father figure the brothers had lost, offering wisdom without exploitation, guidance without control. "You boys have built something beautiful here," Ray said, settling into Jamal's chair for the ritual they both treasured. "Your father would be proud to see how you've honored his memory while creating your own legacy." They'd found their father's grave 6 months earlier, discovering he died alone but sober, having finally escaped the demons that had driven him from their family. His headstone was simple: "Beloved father and barber, every cut tells a story." The brothers had visited monthly since, sharing updates about the studio and asking forgiveness for judgments they'd held too long. As the day wound down, the brothers cleaned their tools with the same care their father had taught them as children. The golden scissors gleamed under LED lights, sharp and purposeful, ready for tomorrow's honest work. Each tool had been sanctified by service to healing rather than harm. "Devin, you've got 3 wig consultations tomorrow," Marcus noted, reviewing the schedule. "All cancer patients from the hospital referral program." "Jamal, the community center wants to know if you'll teach the Saturday youth barbering class again. Apparently last week's students are still talking about proper scissor grip." The brothers had become teachers as well as practitioners, sharing skills that built rather than exploited. Their Saturday programs gave neighborhood kids alternatives to street corners, teaching them trades that commanded respect and provided legitimate income. The studio's walls displayed before and after photos that told stories of transformation, not the artificial changes they'd once facilitated, but genuine improvements in confidence, health, and self-perception. A teenage girl's first professional haircut, an elderly man's beard trim that helped him feel dignified again, a transgender woman's styling session that aligned her appearance with her identity. "I love what we've become," Jamal said, sweeping hair from around his station. "Not just what we've built, but who we are now. Men who create beauty instead of enabling ugliness." Marcus locked the studio's front door, noting how different this routine felt from closing the old salon. No fear of what tomorrow's appointments might bring, no dread of clients who saw them as merchandise, no mother counting money earned through their suffering. "Mama called Ray's shop again this week," Devin mentioned quietly. "Still trying to track us down, still believing we'll eventually need her help." The brothers had learned that Mama Boy's salon never reopened. Her attempts to recruit other young men had failed when word spread about her business practices. She'd moved to another city, working as a hairstylist in someone else's shop, her empire reduced to a single chair and fading dreams of wealth built on others' pain. "She made choices," Marcus said simply. "We've made different ones." The new crown and glory represented more than business success. It was proof that people could reclaim their names, their tools, and their dignity from those who had stolen them. The brothers had learned that the same hands that had been forced to cause pain could choose to create healing. As they walked home together through streets they'd chosen, rather than ones they'd been assigned, the brothers carried something more valuable than money: the knowledge that they'd survived hell and chosen heaven, that they'd broken cycles designed to destroy them, and that their story could inspire others trapped in similar darkness. The golden scissors rested in Marcus's tool bag, cleaned and oiled, ready for another day of honest work. Some things once corrupted could be redeemed through service to something greater than profit. Beauty, they'd learned, was only beautiful when it was freely given and gratefully received. Their story had ended not with wealth or revenge, but with the quiet satisfaction of men who'd found their way home to themselves. And that, they knew, was worth more than all of Mama Boy's blood money combined. The moral of their story echoed in every haircut they gave, every wig they created, every young person they taught. Dignity cannot be bought or sold, only chosen or surrendered. They'd chosen dignity, and in doing so had found freedom. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to watch more stories on our channel. Share this with someone who needs to remember that no matter how dark the situation, there's always a path back to the light. Until next time, keep choosing dignity over dollars, and remember, your worth isn't determined by what others will pay for you, but by what you refuse to sell. See you in the next story.